Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 308. Chapter 308. "À vous, Plea!" suddenly cried a voice. A pleasant feeling of excitement and an expectation of something joyful and solemn was aroused among the soldiers of the convoy and the prisoners. From all sides came shouts of command, and from the left came smartly dressed cavalrymen on good horses, passing the prisoners at a trot. The expression on all faces showed the tension people feel at the approach of those in authority. The prisoners thronged together and were pushed off the road. The convoy formed up. "The Emperor! The Emperor! The Marshal! The Duke!" And hardly had the sleek cavalry passed before a carriage drawn by 6 gray horses rattled by. Pierre caught a glimpse of a man in a 3-cornered hat with a tranquil look on his handsome, plump white face. It was one of the marshals. His eye fell on Pierre's large and striking figure, and in the expression with which he frowned and looked away, Pierre thought he detected sympathy and a desire to conceal that sympathy. The general in charge of the stores galloped after the carriage with a red and frightened face, whipping up his skinny horse. Several officers formed a group, and some soldiers crowded round them. Their faces all looked excited and worried. "What did he say? What did he say?" Pierre heard them ask. When the marshal was passing, the prisoners had huddled together in a crowd, and Pierre saw Karatsiev, whom he had not yet seen that morning. He sat in his short overcoat leaning against a birch tree. On his face, besides the look of joyful emotion it had worn yesterday while telling the tale of the merchant who suffered innocently, there was now an expression of quiet solemnity. Karatsiev looked at Pierre with his kindly round eyes now filled with tears, evidently wishing him to come near that he might say something to him. But Pierre was not sufficiently sure of himself. He made as if he did not notice that look, and moved hastily away. When the prisoners again went forward, Pierre looked round. Karatsiev was still sitting at the side of the road under the birch tree. 2 Frenchmen were talking over his head. Pierre did not look around again, but went limping up the hill. From behind, where Karatsiev had been sitting, came the sound of a shot. Pierre heard it plainly, but at that moment he remembered that he had not yet finished reckoning up how many stages there remained till Smolensk, a calculation he had begun before the marshal went by. And again he started reckoning. 2 French soldiers ran past Pierre, one of whom carried a lowered and smoking gun. They both looked pale, and in the expression on their faces, one of them glanced timidly at Pierre. There was something resembling what he had seen on the face of the young soldier at the execution. Pierre looked at the soldier and remembered that 2 days before, that man had burned his shirt while drying it at the fire, and how they had laughed at him. Behind him, where Karatsiev had been sitting, the dog began to howl. "What a stupid beast! Why is it howling?" thought Pierre. His comrades, the prisoner soldiers walking beside him, avoided looking back at the place where the shot had been fired and the dog was howling, just as Pierre did, but there was a set look on all their faces. All right, that concludes my reading of the absolute gut punch of a chapter 308 of War and Peace. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 308. War. Picasso's Guernica is not looked at, it is listened to. The stark black and white oil painting howls at the spectator in hellish lamentation as the grating scrape of state violence bellows forth from the canvas. Its images are a cartoonish chaos and a careful confusion. A screaming bare-breasted woman, a monstrous Pietà, cradles her lifeless child alongside the decapitated head of her compatriot. Figures flee from raging flames. One woman, engulfed in those flames, raises her arms and screams out for help that will never arrive. Guernica is plangent witness to the atrocity of war. Where Picasso shouts, Tolstoy whispers. Today's chapter achieves the same devastating articulation as Guernica, with only the hushed discharge of a distant gunshot. That single gunshot, the horror that steals Platon Karetsiev's life away, lays bare the dehumanizing and deforming powers of war. Most apparent is its senselessness. Why did this aging peasant have to march in the first place? What awesome threat did he display that demanded his capture and slaughter? Platon's death also shows the horrid mental disorder provoked by war. Pierre looks to Platon shortly before his execution. Platon's dying eyes cry out for company, but Pierre refuses his friend the sympathy. Pierre can't even bring himself to mourn Platon's passing. When the shot rings out, Pierre occupies his thoughts instead with how long a march it must be until they arrive at Smolensk. A dog, howling over Platon's body, summons more empathy for the deceased than the entire human caravan. One vehicle that drives men to slaughter their fellow man at scale is nationalism. We've seen this throughout the novel. The French, convinced of their natural superiority, seek to subdue the lesser nations of Europe. The Russian response to French aggression is just as jingoistic and damaging to global brotherhood. The bombing of Guernica was executed by the nationalistic nations that later led the world to war. This foul patriotism that locates greatness in the accident of birthplace is a sickness. The antidote, perhaps, is the cosmopolitanism argued for in A Year of War and Peace. Daily meditation. Patriotism is in our day an unnatural, irrational, and harmful feeling, and is the cause of a great part of the ills from which mankind is suffering, and that, consequently, this feeling should not be cultivated, as is now being done, but should, on the contrary, be suppressed and eradicated by all means available to rational men. Leo Tolstoy, Patriotism and Government. All right, so that concludes my reading of and reflection on Chapter 308 of War and Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Also down in the show notes or the description, you'll find links to my Amazon wish list for books and movies. If you decide to support me by purchasing one of those, we can set up a Zoom call and talk about that book or that movie. Thanks for your support in any event. Tomorrow we are going to be reading and reflecting on Chapter 309 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.